You mean the residents, or
yeah,
you mean
with like COVID numbers? How's that area? Pretty good.
I haven't tracked that as much, but I do think that the areas that seem to be the most impacted were kind of like in the southeast sector of the city.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. All right. And the assessor's office is involved mainly in what, like permitting or working with businesses?
No, so I mean, our world is a bit separate. So I think, in my assessor world, it's primarily around property taxes. But the honest truth is that all of us are having to pick up and help and pitch out in other ways that are not our natural jobs. And so I've picked up and really started to run with the economic recovery work as a co-chair of the task force. And so this is completely a separate hat from assessor.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to close on.
Building a better Bay Area for a safe and secure future. This is ABC7 News.
I'm Kristen Sze. Welcome to our daily special called Getting Answers. Today, we'll talk about the future of education. That's one thing. You can post your questions on Facebook Live. But first, we are digging deep into San Francisco's major announcements of a reopening timeline and some new face covering rules. So I'm going to just quickly run through the reopening plan as laid out by Mayor London Breed just a couple of hours ago. So June 1st in San Francisco, this is what can open: childcare facilities, botanical gardens, outdoor museums. June 15th, outdoor dining at restaurants, in-store shopping, sports with no spectators, summer camps, non-emergency medical appointments. July 13th, indoor restaurant dining, hair salons, and barbershops. To be decided, but potentially mid-August, we're talking about schools, bars, nail salons, gyms, tattoo and massage parlors, playgrounds, swimming pools, indoor museums, and the final phase, live audiences at concerts, festivals, and sports. That has no date right now. Other major announcements. The stay-at-home order will continue indefinitely. If you're within 30 feet of someone, you are required to have a face covering on, and businesses have the right to refuse service to people not wearing face coverings. The mayor also said, don't take enforcement into your own hands. Don't confront somebody because they're doing something different from you. Now, one city official who was with Mayor Breed when she made those announcements is City Assessor Carmen Chu. Carmen, or Assessor Chu, thanks so much for joining us. Glad to have you. I know as chair of the Economic Recovery Task Force in San Francisco, you were a big part in shaping these dates. So I got to ask you, as we reported, the current SIP shelter-in-place order expires May 31st. So starting June 1st, we enter phase 2A. But the shelter-in-place continues, right? And in fact, the mayor said indefinitely. That word does scare a lot of people. But what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, I think one of a reasonable and thoughtful and measured approach to how it is that we reopen the economy. I think San Francisco and the Bay Area has done such a great job with trying to flatten the curve, and in the process of it has saved so many individuals' lives and helped to really bolster the health outcome. The challenge, though, has been that there has been a big impact on our economy, on workers, on businesses. And so as we begin to move to this phase, some of the thinking here is to say, well, let's open this in a reasonable, thoughtful manner. Let's make sure that we're considering everything from state guidelines to risks to making sure that we're looking at what is happening in other Bay Area counties as we move forward. When there is an indefinite shelter-in-place order, the essential meaning of that is, as you participate in some of these economic activities, of course, you're going to be out and about, but we want to encourage people as much as they can to continue to be at home. Of course, you can go out to purchase food. You can continue to do the activities that are being allowed or permissive. Right. But again, the idea there is to really try to make sure people continue to social distance as much as possible. We're going to be operating under a new reality a different way of living than we had been prior to COVID-19. So I think
Sure.
that is reflective of this.
So Samson Wong wants to know, what about Santa Clara County? I know you're in San Francisco, but did San Francisco work out this timeline on your own or along with other Bay Area counties? That is, do you expect other Bay Area counties will have roughly the same timeline?
Yeah, so I think, first off, I want to really commend our public health officers from across the Bay Area for really coming together and making sure that we moved together, especially when it came to putting the shelter-in-place order in place. I think what we recognize in San Francisco and in the Bay Area is that ultimately our residents, we move from county to county. We might go across the Bay to work, to shop, and to do other activities. And so there is an interconnectedness with all of our counties. It doesn't mean that we move exactly with the same restriction or exactly the same guidelines going forward, but there is a strong desire amongst our health officers to continue to coordinate their work. Our health officer continues to work with our Bay Area counterparts. I know that they're constantly meeting, they're constantly discussing risks, they're constantly discussing different elements, but today's roadmap announcement truly is just that. It's a roadmap to tell the public in a transparent way, here's how we're thinking about potential reopening.
Okay.
We understand a lot of factors can come into place that could change it, but again, it's a roadmap to allow people to plan and to prepare ahead.
I want to ask you about the mask requirement. Wear a mask outside anytime you're within 30 feet of someone. I'm reading a lot of response to that, and people want to know, how did you come up with 30 feet? What is the data for that?
Unfortunately, I wish I could answer that. I'm not the public health officer or a medical professional, so I might have to defer that to our public health officer.
Do you know if police will cite people, though?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. I know you are working with businesses, though. So will businesses be told to turn away customers if they want to enter the store or the restaurant without a mask?
I think ultimately we want to make sure that when we do reopen, that our businesses are making sure that they're putting in place measures to help protect the workers, but also the customers. What is really interesting about this is that ultimately we can say that we're going to open the economy, but we're not going to have a fully reopened economy or confidence in being able to rejoin economic activity unless people feel safe, frankly, in going to their stores, supermarkets, and know that safety protocols are being followed. So we are really encouraging people to take seriously this idea about facial covering. It's about really enabling the larger economy to continue to move forward. And also it's about protecting others and yourself. And so we do hope that people will continue to do that.
I definitely get that protection and keeping the numbers flat. Those are critical goals in terms of how you're going about it. But I am wondering exactly, how you came up with this timeline. For example, July 13th for hair salons and barbershops. As you know, Governor Newsom is already allowing that on a state level as long as the counties permit it. What is it about San Francisco's either demographics or our case number that makes San Francisco officials think, hey, we got to be 6 weeks behind that in terms of letting the hair salons and barbershops to resume?
It's a great question. And so just to be clear, the state allowed for hair salons and barbershops for counties that have received a variance approval. And so those are really meant to try to capture areas that may be more rural or might have less density or maybe may not be urban areas or have low prevalence of COVID-19. And so the one thing I think people should understand is that the state provides sort of a guideline in terms of and limitations in terms of what can open. And what they expect is that every county is going to be taking a look at health indicators and what's happening on the ground in our cities to be able to say, are we able to take that next step in terms of reopening those businesses or those types of activities that the state says generally is okay in this phase. That's a key and critical part of this because the state has a whole statewide picture. They don't have the individual county by county lens that we do. And so I think that's incredibly important, especially in San Francisco, where we are a dense urban city, where we have mass public transportation, among other things. We have special considerations that we need to make in order to ensure that we're following the rules here. In terms of the phasing, the intent with how it is that we phase it was really to make sure that we spaced out and created intervals in timing to allow for additional activities to happen. The primary reason for that is to ensure that our public health officials are able to see the demographics and see where the numbers are coming in terms of health indicators. Are we seeing a rise in hospitalizations? Are we seeing a rise in individuals who are being detected and tested to have COVID-19? it's important to know that because there is a long incubation period for COVID-19, there is a little bit of lag time before we start to see the impact of movement and infection. So part of the reason of spacing that out was really to make sure that as we open different tranches of the economy, we're able to also assess the impact on the health side.
All right, we are chatting today with San Francisco Assessor Carmen Sze, also chair of the city's Economic Recovery Task Force here, talking about the reopening timeline the mayor laid out just today. We're going to continue this conversation over on our live stream platforms and take a short break on the air and be right back.
We are in commercial break.
All right, just a quick check-in with the producer. We are still with Carmen when we come back, yes? Okay. Okay, I would like to extend this a little bit more if we can. Let's try to do that. Okay, Assessor Sze, let me ask you this. Some people have questions. Cheryl Park wants to know, what about multi-family residential pool areas? She's looking at the timeline, sure where that. She's not sure where this fits in, when it'll be open.
I didn't hear your category.
Oh yes, multi-family residential pool areas. So like a pool, you know, at an apartment condo complex.
Okay, yeah.
Where would that fit in?
That doesn't contemplate opening up until in or shared pool spaces until the third phase in the state's order.
Okay, is that mid-August for San Francisco, roughly?
Yeah, that's mid-August.
Okay,
yeah, mid-August. Again,
what about tennis courts? I know some Bay Area counties have opened them. Are you guys keeping your public courts closed?
I think that there are, I have to check my notes, but I think that there were some provisions so that people can play tennis if it's like single and there's like certain modifications, so people can't have shared usage of equipment, those kinds of things.
Eric wants to know about the library. Does that open in mid-August with indoor museums?
We would imagine that that would be possible because it's very similar in nature.
All right, someone here wants to know, why do you not enforce people wearing masks on Muni?
Oh, I can't answer that question. Enforcement and masks and the health orders, those kinds of health orders, I've not been involved with, so unfortunately, I can't speak to that.
Okay. Do you know if they are asking people to wear masks at least on Muni and public transit?
I couldn't say.
Okay.
I couldn't say.
Okay. All right. What about, somebody said, okay, 30 feet is probably when approaching folks in a park. Yeah, that is, you know, a lot of people are wondering about that 30 feet thing because it's a farther distance than they had heard before.
15.
All right, we're coming back on air in 10 seconds. You hearing me okay? Okay.
7, 6, 5 seconds, 4, 3.
All right, we are here today talking with San Francisco's assessor, Carmen Sze, also chairing the Economic Recovery Task Force for San Francisco, talking about these big updates announced today with the reopening timelines. Once again, real quickly, you know, phase 2A starts June 1st, outdoor museums, historical sites, childcare. June 15th, we'll get more like summer camps, indoor retail, outdoor dining, religious services, and then in mid-July, indoor dining, hair salons, barbershops, and then mid-August, schools with modifications. So I guess this means, right, Governor Newsom at one point had mentioned possibly schools opening in July if they wanted to. That does not appear like San Francisco would be ready to do that by July. Right.
So I think it's important to know that there are many different things that people have been talking about. There is sort of this continued remote learning scenario. So I think that that continues to be a possibility. I think what we want to make sure is that we have pegged the school reopening to a time frame that allows the school district also to be able to plan forward to what that might look like. I think they're doing a lot of work right now to be planning to look at their facilities to see what might be possible and to see what might be in the best interest in making sure that kids do continue to have the education that we all expect them to. So that's going to be something that is timed, and it's going to be in close coordination to this with the San Francisco Unified School District.
All right. What about nail salons and massage parlors in mid-August? Why do you think that sector needs to be a month later than hair salons and barbershops? I know in San Francisco as well, you have a lot of people in that industry, mostly immigrant women, really earning low income. So I think there are questions about, you know, why that does need to take longer.
Yeah, so to that, again, I would point to the state's guidance. Again, remember that we're taking a look at how the state is moving and things are constantly changing. So I will just say this one thing, which is this is really a roadmap for people to be able to anticipate and see what might be coming and the order in which something might be coming. And the reason that's been important is because we've heard from so many businesses and residents about the need to start planning and preparing ahead of time. You can't flip the switch and all of a sudden expect businesses to be able to comply with some of these requirements. So we've heard that, and we want to make sure that we're addressing it through this roadmap. In terms of the state's guidance, remember that they did allow for barbers and hairdress facilities to open earlier for various counties. And so they're signaling to our local jurisdictions that those are areas that they may consider lower risk compared to other personal services that you mentioned earlier. They squarely have put some of those other personal services in the state's contemplated phase 3. And so we expect that that won't come until later. Remember that right now the state is in early phase 2. So they haven't even hit phase 3 yet. They're currently in early phase 2. So again, I think the intent here is to try to match up our understanding of what the state is signaling to us and also guiding us to do.
So Lakan Borzornia wants to know, how can they control all the kids to wear masks? You know, I know in Asia, a lot of kids just naturally wear them because they see their peers wearing them, and it's kind of just what everybody does. Are you contemplating kind of a citywide public awareness PSA campaign to teach people such practices, best practices, for when they do go back to school or go back to restaurants or go back to work?
Yeah, I think, Kristen, you bring up a great point, which is ultimately we in the Bay Area and in San Francisco, we all have to do our part to allow us to continue to move forward with opening up our economy. We know the impacts are pretty devastating to businesses and workers. And so part of that is really saying, how are we going to make sure that we're helping each other and protecting each other? And it's wearing masks, making sure that we're face coverings, making sure that we're socially, spatially distanced, and also making sure that we're continuing to have good hygiene. And so to your point, there is always more that we can do and should be doing to make sure that we're sharing that public broad messaging. And of course, anything that ABC7 can do to help us with that, we would definitely appreciate.
Well, come on anytime. Always a pleasure talking with you and getting the facts and the city's perspective as you start to reopen. Carmen Chu, thanks so much. Nice talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a short break on the air. When we come back, we have a local teacher and superintendent to talk about the changes that could be in store for Bay Area schools. So stick around. All right. Thank you, Carmen. Good to see you. Take care.
Thank you. You take care, too.
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right. Facebook friends, thank you for joining today. Hope you're enjoying the conversation. I think the biggest shocker was when San Francisco's mayor announced that you need to wear a mask within 30 feet of anybody else in public. And that number was not one that, you know, had been utilized before. So trying to understand the science behind it and how they came upon that number and decided on it. So regardless, that is going to be what they're asking of San Franciscans. So within 30 feet, when you're outdoors, wear a mask. And then also the stay-at-home order is extended indefinitely. Again, that doesn't mean you cannot go out for the things listed that are going to slowly be permitted. But I think their main point is try to avoid contact with others when possible, when you can. Basically, when you don't need it, avoid it. Obviously, they're not saying you can't have any contact or go outside from fresh air. And you can see some things will be reopening. Hair salons and barbershops mid-July for San Francisco. Again, that is the estimated time period. All right. Coming up next, we have Fremont educators. Brannon Dorsey. Hi, Brannon.
30 seconds.
Good to see you. And Raul Zamora. Good to see you as well.
Hello, good to see you as well. Hello,
All right.
Brandon.
Hey, Mr.
Hello.
Producer, how much time do we have? In one segment. Okay, thank you.
Stand by, Kristen.
Okay, we can use the Taiwan when I say what behavior changes. All right, welcome back. Let's turn now to education. I know a lot of parents want to know what the future of schools will look like. I want to know. So joining us now to provide some insight, Brannon Dorsey, a first grade teacher at Parkmont Elementary in Fremont. She's also on the board of the Fremont Unified District Teachers Association. And Raul Zamora, the acting superintendent for the Fremont Unified School District, a big district. You know, I think you're what, K through 12, right, Raul?
Correct. Actually, we go to TK and also adult education as well.
Got it. Well, thank you both for joining us. San Francisco just said mid-August likely for schools reopening there. What are you hearing in your county, of course? Raul?
So right now we're following the Alameda County Public Health Guidelines, and we are starting to put some plans together with all of our stakeholder groups, and that includes starting school in late of August. And so we're trying to look at different models. So if the county changes their guidelines, we will follow those as well.
All right. Raul, what kind of challenges to the facility, or I should say, what kind of changes to the facility, the schools, do you think might be needed before you can reopen them?
You know, we have to take into consideration safety for our students, our staff, and parents coming onto campus. We're taking a look at every possible angle. So it's going to take a group or task force to really look at what is it that we need to put into place before we start school. So it's actually A to Z. There's no short number or short letters that we need to take a look at. We're taking a look at every possible angle to put place into our school sites, as well as our district sites as well, to make sure that we cover every possible variable that we may come across.
All right. Well, I want to bring Brandon into the conversation. What would make you feel safe as a teacher?
Well, I think our number one priority, as Dr. Zamora said, is the health and safety of our students and our staff. When I think about my school, I look at the fact that it is over 50 years old, has aging systems. It has multiple access points that we'll have to control to limit the access on campus. My classroom currently has 28 desks. I will not be able to social distance my first graders with 28 students in my classroom. So we are going to have to be very creative. We are going to have, I think, plans A, B, and C, and then possibly blend some of those models later down the road. But educators and all stakeholders need to be part of the conversation so that we can make a plan that works best, you know, for our district. As there's 1,000 districts in California, and each one is going to have a slightly different plan for their needs.
Are you both supportive of everybody getting their temperature taken as they arrive on campus, students and teachers?
I mean, I can only speak for myself. I personally am. Unfortunately, you know, as educators, we face students coming to school after, you know, in the morning after they've been given medicine, and we've had 6 students go home. I've personally been exposed to the flu in my classroom and was out for, you know, 10 days because I was exposed to a student who was sent sick to school. So it's a big concern of mine. And I think for everyone's safety, especially when we're dealing with small children, you know, TK starts at, the students are 4. They don't have great communication skills yet. They haven't developed those. That's why they're going to school. So I think that is definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Let's talk about the young kids. I mean, you're a first grade teacher, but let's talk about the really young kids and how you change their behavior to try to be safe and social distance, right? For example, masks. I know my cousin's son who goes to preschool in Taiwan, all the kids wear masks and they're taught to do so, and they see everybody doing it, so they all do, and it's not an issue. They actually keep it on the whole day unless they're eating. Is that something you think can happen here in your classroom? Brandon, what do you think?
I think there's definitely going to be a learning curve. I'm thinking back to the beginning of March when all the news of COVID-19 was hitting, and you know, I was constantly telling students, don't touch your face. Please don't touch your face. Don't touch other people. Don't touch your face. Wash your hands. And so I think that we will, you know, we've had some bleed time because if students are out in the community, I would think right now that their parents would be having them wear masks, even though it isn't a requirement, I believe, for children under 12. But my concern are very young students and our students who might have special needs, who may not understand or may have a physical aversion to having something over their faces.
Yeah, so then you have to figure out how an exception can be made and how to keep both the student and the teacher safe. You know, Raul, Dr. Zamora, a lot of these things that you're considering, I know would take money. I mean, for sure, if you're going to have smaller class sizes, right? One teacher for every 12 kids and always with those 12 kids, or take out desks and need more, I don't know whether it's trailers or what, or get people, away from each other. How are you going to accomplish these things when you're looking at budget cuts from the state?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because it's not only Fremont, it's all the state of California school districts. While I appreciate the different models that may be coming out and the social distancing, there is just not enough funding from the state and the federal government. We need to tell our legislators right now, we need the funding. We want us to protect our students and our staff, and the funding is just not there. We can come up with the best model ever, but if without the funding, then what do we do? So we need that funding. And so I can't stress enough, without that funding, we are going to make drastic cuts. Currently, our district is currently facing the cuts that are needed to address the May revise that just came out. And we're probably going to do some more revisions in August. But that piece of the money is just too important to overlook and pass it on to the local districts. This is your problem. It's not the state's problem. No, you know what? It's all of our problems, and we need to come together to figure this out. Just like Mrs. Dorsey was saying, that she can't have 28 students in the classroom if we're not protecting ourselves.
Right. I mean, even if she wanted to, the public health officer is not going to let you do that. So, Dr. Samora, here's another question for you. Some people are wondering, can students elect to stay home and do distance learning even if you open up the physical campuses? I imagine that's something, district by district they're deciding on. But what is the talk and thinking in your district?
You're asking the top two questions I was hoping you were asking. So our legislatures also have the ability to change how they fund schools. Right now, there's a bill in the state that is looking at the instructional days, but you know what? We need a bill that's going to look at the instructional minutes, because it's going to be the amendments that we need to fund the schools, not necessarily the days. The reason I say that is because there may be opportunities where the students stay at home and receive that distance learning. So are schools going to get credit for that or not? And we need the state legislatures to understand whatever opportunity of teaching we provide, we need funding for our districts. That is vital for us to stay alive and teaching our students.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another question, Dr. Samora, which is, what is the most likely scenario, tell me, especially for high school students, right? Alternating days, something we're hearing about, no sports or extracurriculars. Maybe you only go in the morning, like 10th graders go, Monday mornings. What do you see?
One of the concepts that has been gaining popularity, which I'm not necessarily in agreement with, because I don't see this happening, is keeping a bubble of students all day. And I'm not sure how that's going to be delivered instruction to meet all 5 or 6 different topics, such as math, science, social studies. They have to have the different teaching of all those different subjects, so we can't possibly teach them with one teacher the whole period. So It's going to be a different model. One of the things that we're going to try to work with our task force, which includes all our stakeholders, is to come up with different models, whether it's in distance learning, whether it's in-person learning, or a blended model. We have these models set in place, so when the guidelines come forward, we just make minor edits so that we can put that plan together and move forward with our education.
All right, Dr. Samora and also Brandon Dorsey, teacher and acting superintendent of Fremont School. Thank you so very much for your insight. We can continue this real quick conversation with them over on our social platforms. Be right back.
We're in commercial break.
All right, before we go for good on our Facebook platform streaming, Brandon, I just have one more question for you, which is, teaching first grade, do you think either the distance learning or the hybrid model works, or do you really think truly in your heart for kids of that age, it's really got to be in person for it to be effective?
I'm really glad you asked that. There really is no substitution for in-person learning. We build a classroom community. We are invested in our students' lives. When we talk about grading or seeing how they're doing on any certain subject, my biggest tool is my proximity to my students. That means that I'm walking around, I'm seeing what they're doing, I'm watching their facial expressions. So those are all the nuances that I, as an educator, experience every single day, and I can immediately assess where kids are. Do they get it? Do they not get it? And that tool has been taken away from me in distance learning. It's just not the same. So I'm very concerned about that. But I am also confident in the educators in the state that we can address any type of learning gap that students may have when they return.
All right, we have a few seconds. Dr. Samora, if you're still there, do you think sports will likely return to high schools, for example, by fall, or maybe not till winter or spring? What do you think?
I think there may be a delay in sports, and it's going to look different. There's certainly going to be a different modification to sports. Again, it's trying to make sure that the contact sports has that safety regulation. If I can just add to Mrs. Dorsey's
Sure, you have 15 seconds.
comment, I had the pleasure several times to see her teach, and she's correct. To see the students come up and, you know, just give her all sorts of praises and give her hugs, you know, that's really important for that contact in person, and that's the culture that Ms. Dorsey has.
I want to give you a hug, Brandon. Thank you both. Appreciated your insight. Take good care.
2, 1.
Welcome back. Want to thank you so much for joining us today on this interactive show, Getting Answers. We'll be here every day at 3 on air and on live stream answering your questions. Facebook Live, YouTube Live, ABC7news.com, and our app. We'll be keeping this education theme going with our next ABC7 Listens Bay Area conversation today at 4. State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurman will join us, along with the superintendents from Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose Unified Schools. You can join the conversation live today in 30 minutes at 4 o'clock right here on ABC7, on the ABC7 News app, or ABC7news.com. Friends, thank you for joining us today. Take care. Bye.